So evidently we broke the number one rule of being on the internet and we decided to voice our opinions last week and said that we were confident the Lions were going to win against the Minnesota Vikings. Why we ever did that, I have no idea, but now we just have egg on our faces as the Lions embarrass themselves, getting thoroughly outplayed in every facet of the game by the Minnesota Vikings at home on Sunday, losing 27 to 24, which was a shockingly close result considering how not competitive the game felt for a majority of the time. And the Lions are now we have some bigger questions about them long term, but we'll talk about all of that. Welcome into the Payne and Drain show, everyone. My name is Zach Payne. I am one half of this podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Alex Drain. And for you, those of you who are watching on YouTube, you'll notice Alex is not in his normal set because Alex decided to take a trip in the middle of this football season. Bold choice, my man. How are we doing?
Pretty good. I'm out here in New York City, Manhattan today. Michigan football on a bye week, and my brother's going to school out here, so I went to visit him. But first time I've taken a trip during football season in a long time, so a little unusual. And this is my hotel room. It's kind of like a boutique hotel, which is a lot of what the hotels in New York are. So like the lighting is kind of weird, so I can't get it super bright. But oh well, that's we just have to make do. I brought my stuff with me, so we can do a show at least.
There you go. So, as always, we're going to get into this game, recap what happened on Sunday, and then we will talk about what happened the rest of the week, as well as previewing Lions Commanders, a matchup that has now, well, we'll talk about the Commanders later, who have just been so horribly snake bitten by some bad injury luck this season. But starting with the Lions, as always, we do actually, I'll start with some injury updates from the Lions as we head forward in the season, because oh boy, were there a lot of injuries that were happening. Not necessarily like big injuries, aside from one, but like a lot of guys were getting banged up in Sunday's game. 4 out of 5 offensive linemen hurt at various points. Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker, the Lions are preparing to play without this weekend. And Tate Ratledge also left briefly, but the big one, obviously, Christian Mahogany goes to injured reserve with did we see exactly what his injury was? I don't know, but it was a scary looking play. It was very similar to Aiden Hutchinson's kind of leg whip incident last year where he's just falling and his leg clashes with a defensive player in this case, and he is unable to put weight on it. He's carted off. Just not a good sight. What does the absence of like what will the absence of Mahogany do for this offensive line that has admittedly not been great this season?
I don't know if it's a death blow necessarily, but it's not great because the hope was that the young guards would grow up over the course of the year, and now he's not going to have at least a month or a month and a half of reps in games, and that's such valuable experience for him. And I don't know how much better he is than the next rung, but you have to assume he's better, and it's going to take a struggling group even further down. And I'm not feeling great about the Eagles and Packers double dip in the middle of November with the pass rush from those lines in the interior at the moment.
Yeah, so Mahogany goes to IR. Miles Frazier's 21-day window did start. Frazier, who is a rookie and is in a very similar spot that Mahogany was in last year, ironically, with missing the first chunk of the season, and we'll see how he acclimates to the NFL and if he can get in there. Frazier obviously was an elite pass protector in college, so maybe he can earn himself some reps in the meantime. Coyote Awashika will presumably get the start. There was also talk about Graham Glasgow potentially being moved to guard. I don't know. We're going to see what the Lions do with the interior of their offensive line over the next couple of weeks. In addition to Miles Frazier being or getting back to practice and opening his 21-day window, we also had Josh Pascal, his 21-day window opened, which for me was so relieving because, oh my Lord, do the Lions need someone that can set the edge in the run game? So that was really good to see. But yeah, it looks like Sunday against the Commanders, there will be no Mahogany because he's on IR now. Probably no Taylor Decker. Probably no Penei Sewell. Dan Skipper also didn't practice. So the Lions are very quickly running out of offensive linemen here.
Could be a little bit of an ugly game on Sunday with Jaden Daniels out too for the Commanders.
Yeah, that's gonna be something. Von Miller might be able to turn back the clock and have just 5 sacks in this one. But going back in time to this Lions Vikings game, right from the start, I feel like, and we'll start with the offensive line because they are the biggest story coming out of this game. The Vikings defensive front, we've at times criticized it for being because they don't do anything overly intricate. They very clearly show you they're going to blitz, and they blitz. Now they add a lot of stunts and twists and all that, but they're very deliberate in what they want to do. And this is where I really miss Frank Ragnow because the communication on the interior of the offensive line was horrible all game. Tate Ratledge looked like a fish out of water. He looked like he had never seen a stunt in his life. The amount of times that Jonathan Allen was pushing out to go over to Penei Sewell because they were running a twist on the inside, and Ratledge just kept blocking him and let a guy through the middle was very frustrating. Mahogany got beat numerous times. Glasgow wasn't great. It was a mess.
Yeah, it we talked about last year, really the previous 2 years when we played Flores, we were never really worried about it, right? Like it was always Goff is an expert. He's not going to be fooled by the stuff that gets young quarterbacks, and the Lions know how to pick these weird blitzes up. It's so gimmicky, and the Lions usually sliced them and diced them. I mean, Goff's numbers against the Vikings last couple of seasons were unreal. And last year that was the Vikings formula. They got most offenses and then they just couldn't stop the Lions. Really, they couldn't stop, a couple of the other veteran quarterbacks they played. And then this year, it looked like Goff was a rookie, and that was partially Goff, but it was more the offensive line not giving him the time, and they couldn't really. They struggled to ID the blitzes, but at the same time, we have to talk about running back pass protection like that. They were getting free rushers against the running backs, which okay, but brutal game from Jahmyr Gibbs in that phase of the game. I mean, he just could not hang with those rushers. Montgomery fared better, but still not great. And then there were some instances where Goff just didn't. There was one blitz from, I think it was Harrison Smith sacked him on a third down that killed a drive, came just free off the edge. No one picked it up. It was across the board. It was center and quarterback assignments, and then the running backs as well. All of it came together, and there was just way too much pressure. I mean, it was a 5 sacks, I think, in this game. I mean, that just, we're not used to seeing that. And it was just a total 180 from what we usually have seen when in the Ragnow Goff era versus the Vikings.
Yeah, and the other thing too is Montgomery just didn't have as many pass protected snaps. I think Gibbs had like 15 or something like that, like pass pro snaps versus the blitz, which is just way too many for him because that's not he's not very good at it, which he's an undersized running back. He's very good and he's very explosive, but he's not built to pass protect like the way Montgomery is. And even when the blitz was being picked up, Goff was just completely rattled. He did not trust his protection. If his first read wasn't open, he immediately went to the check down, and he felt like if he didn't get the ball out in 2 seconds, he was going to get hit. So you could see Goff get frantic. You could see him panicking in the pocket, even when he had time. That disrupted everything the Lions wanted to do, and that you know bleeds into the third down conversation that we'll continue in a second. But a big part of this is the Vikings were able to pin their ears back all day because the Lions couldn't run the ball on first down and they would get themselves backed up and then the Vikings would be able to pin their ear back and it kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy where the Vikings ended up in these situations so often because and this is not a Vikings defense that's necessarily built to stop the run, but the Lions just did not execute well enough on early downs to get themselves into favorable positions.
Yeah, it got by like the second quarter, it got to the point where I was just saying they have no reason not to blitz every snap. Just every snap coming after the Lions because the Lions just don't have answers. The Lions did not have any real way to punish those. Their screens were ineffective. The Vikings were doing well horizontally, and they didn't have like a slant or a mesh or just something to there was a couple that Raymond was open on a crossing route and Goff threw it into the ground. And there was one other where he couldn't get it away in time, but they couldn't really get that going. And they just didn't. they didn't really have a lot of answers. And they weren't, when the Vikings aren't getting punished by blitzing, you're just leaning into Flores, and he's getting to do it more and more and more. And then if you can sack him on first down, then you kind of kill the drive, frankly, where the Lions are right now. I mean, if you put the Lions into second and 18, it's hard to see them clawing out of it at the moment. And that's it just this was a you would have liked to see the Lions win the game, but it's a good game to have happen in the sense that it really clearly exposes the flaws. And now the coaching staff and the players have 7 weeks, 8 weeks to figure this out before the playoffs because this is going to be too easy. If it stays in this shape, you're not going to go far in the playoffs with this. The book is out on what the weaknesses are, and they've got a couple months to try and solve them. And that's what this game really laid bare.
Yeah, because if you look at the NFC right now, the Packers, man, that would be a nightmarish playoff matchup right now. The Eagles, that is also nightmare fuel. I wouldn't trust this team to beat, honestly, like even Seattle or Tampa Bay. Like I know they beat Tampa Bay already. Man, I wouldn't trust it that much either. And even if the Lions somehow win the division, what are you trusting them against the Rams? I don't know. They have a good young front. They got some good players. The 49ers, maybe that's a bit better of a matchup, but there's so many good NFC teams that I am starting to get a little worried about where the Lions can go this season. And a big part of this conversation has now shifted from personnel to coaching, and John Morton specifically. A lot of people are starting to turn on him and question him very seriously. I am also starting to get into that group. How are you feeling about more? I know we talked about it at the bye, but has your opinion changed on him at all after this game?
I don't know. I It wasn't a great game from him, but at the same time, it did feel like there was a little bit of the armchair quarterbacking where, oh, the play didn't work, therefore the coordinating was bad. And I think in this game, there are things that we can improve with coordinating, but I also wonder just how much is realistically possible in a Goff offense, where you have uh iffy at best pass protecting offensive line. Like I just
Yeah.
wonder if there's a ceiling and how much you can really summit there because we kind of beat around the bush and talked about different scenarios, but at the end of the day, this is an offensive line that last year had a star all pro caliber center and a Pro Bowl caliber guard. And then they lost those guys in the offseason and replaced them with rookies. And the result we've seen this year, I think, is pretty in line with that. I'm not super down on Tate Ratledge or Mahogany relative to what I thought coming into the year. There's just been the ups and downs that you expected. There have been weeks where we were like, wow, that was great from Ratledge and Mahogany. And then there have been weeks like this one where it's real bad. And when it's real bad, I just don't know how much you can really do. Now, the stuff we've talked about that is familiar is still the case. The third and long screens continue to kill me. There were two more in this game, and one of them got within like 3 yards of the first down, which was probably the best one they've run all year because the most mystifying part of all of it is that none of them work, and very few of them even get close. I mean, for the most part, they're bottled up after 3 or 4 yards when you need 12 to gain. I mean, it's not like they're on the precipice of it really being something that's working. So that's an issue. And then just the vertical passing stuff we've talked about, the issues with JMO. I mean, Morton talked a big game during the bye week about how he had failed JMO and blah blah blah, and then there's nothing with him in this game. He had one screen in the first quarter, nothing until the fourth quarter. Then all of a sudden, they're using him and they have one of their better drives of the game. They score a touchdown, and it's just I think they're second in scoring offense, I believe, after this week. I think they moved up from third to second, I saw, which is very humorous. I think probably because I don't know who would have jumped below them, but I just saw that stat. And it's just something's felt off all year. And maybe that is what you can quantify as coordinating, but it hasn't really clicked. And some of it is personnel, but there is still stuff with the play calling that feels like it can be improved.
Yeah, and like I have my gripes, especially with the run game. I feel like they are. a lot more predictable in the run game this year. Way too much 12 personnel duo with both backs. It's not like they're forcing Gibbs to run between the tackles a lot. When it works, it's great. When it doesn't, it really stings. And they like there was one play that killed me where I think it was Hargrave on the Vikings front. The Lions are running duo and Mahogany and Decker are both supposed to block Hargrave, and neither of them blocks Hargrave, and he blows up the play for a 3 yard loss. It's like if you're gonna run this play, like you run it so much that you should know how to run it effectively by now. That's been killing me. I still like I know that Ratledge is a bit of a road grader, but considering who your tackles are, I've been very frustrated with the lack of outside runs this year. And the third long screens, whatever. I thought the Lions were just cursed with the third and long stuff after they did it was like a 3rd and 14 toss to Montgomery, and he actually is gonna gain the first down and then he fumbles. Like that, I just started laughing at the point. I'm like, okay, they're never gonna convert a third and long. They finally do with JMO where this is a play that we saw a ton the past couple of years. The first time this season we've seen it, where they just run a curl and JMO just makes a guy miss. It's like, wow, we forgot that this guy who's very shifty and speedy in open field can make people miss. And so I don't know. It feels like Goff started th forcing it to JMO. I don't like. It's not like Morton did anything creative with him, like you said, in throughout the game. It was just Goff started throwing to Williams more, and I know I saw Vikings fans being like the Vikings had to beat the refs too because of the alleged push off on the Williams touchdown at the end, which I found quite humorous that Vikings fans were still complaining. But JMO clearly, like you saw it in the fourth quarter, he has the talent to just do things that most players in the league, frankly, cannot. There's a lot of players who cannot catch a curl route, then make a DB miss and pick up an extra 5, 6, 7 yards. There are a lot of players that cannot just outrun a DB, catch the streak, and then do that acrobatic twist down the sideline and keep the feet in bounds to get to the end zone. We just got to see him used more, man, and it's getting really frustrating. I've also noticed an uptick in Khalif Raymond snaps the past couple of weeks. Tesla seems like completely uninvolved in the offensive game plan at this point. So I don't know. What do you make of the usage on offense for players that are not named Amon-Ra?
Well, the interesting thing is this is around the time of the year when you would have said, "Oh, like Tesla is coming on," right? You say, "Okay, maybe he's developmental receiver, not gonna do a ton in the first half." This is where you'd want to see him start chipping in, but just I still haven't seen a ton from him. I mean, it points to this year we've been okay with the amount of the usage in general because the results have been good enough. But if the results are starting to sag, then maybe you gotta switch it up a little bit more. And I want to just see a few more vertical passes just for the sake of it. And I know they don't have necessarily a great jump ball guy deep. Maybe that's to Slaw, but just something to try and test it that way because especially against a team like the Vikings where they're rolling safeties down and they're blitzing you a lot, you got to try something. Keep them honest. You hit one play over the top, maybe they back off a little bit. If your screen game isn't working, your slant game is non-existent, you're not doing a lot crossing routes. What are you going to do to punish blitzes? You got to at that point just heave it deep once or twice. Give it a shot. See what you can do there. The Montgomery fumble was funny because wasn't that going to be the first third and long conversion of the year officially?
Yep.
I
It
don't
would
think
have
there had
been,
been one
yeah.
earlier in that game because like that was
Yeah, the JMO
yeah, that
JMO
was
came
kind of
after
like
that.
the experience of watching that play was kind of like indicative of the game itself, where they toss it and you're like, oh yeah, he's gonna get it, and then boom, right there, oh, and then it comes out and um, it just it's a weird game because they did end up in the final numbers moving the ball okay, and they scored a decent chunk of points, but they weren't good enough when it really mattered. And they allowed themselves to fall behind early. They clawed back to tie it at 14. Then they allowed themselves to fall behind again. And then a furious rally. They get the late touchdown. But that Montgomery fumble alone was a huge play. I mean, I think you can kind of chalk up this loss, honestly, as many flaws as there were on offense and on defense, to two plays: Montgomery's fumble and the block field goal. Those gave Vikings points. It gave them short fields, and that was the difference. And the Lions had one takeaway on defense. They didn't do anything with it. And that's another thing with the offense. Second week in a row, you get a takeaway, midfield-ish, slightly into your own territory, and you do nothing with it. And if you're not punishing the mistakes in the other team's offense against a decent team, it's going to be tough. And it was an odd game just because of how much the Lions have been able to eat Flores's lunch money the last few years, and then this was his revenge game. But I think the Lions should have a better plan moving forward against this team in particular. Like watching that, as disappointing as it was, I feel better about their chances of winning on Christmas just because I'm like they're gonna be ready for that game now. Like
Oh yeah.
this was a bad showing, but they're going to do their homework now. It's unacceptable that the team came out looking the way it did off a bye week. I mean, that was the worst part about it on all three phases of the ball. Just so many mistakes out of a bye. But I do think they'll be studied up more, especially in their pass protection, to handle some of this stuff the second time it comes around.
Yeah, and you would expect them to just have more easy stuff. Like that was something that was so integral to beating the Vikings in the past was just having the easy out, the drag routes, the slants, the like there was multiple touchdowns that they scored in those games over the past couple of years where it's just someone being left open on a drag route and because the Vikings sent too many guys or throwing the deep ball like there was the one regardless it was just incredibly frustrating. We do however have to give some flowers to one player who even though he was way more involved on the first drive and kind of less so throughout the game, Sam Laporta continues to be have the one of the more underrated, amazing tight end seasons in the league right now. He has been really good for like over a month, and no one seems to care. But that's that touchdown on the first drive. It's fourth down, and he just goes up the seam, makes the catch, and then three Vikings are unable to bring him down, and then he gets some help from a teammate to push him into the end zone. Laporta's been pretty spectacular so far this season.
Yeah, that was a really emphatic first drive, and they had good stuff for him, right? Like they had that they it wasn't the full tight end delay play that Pat Johnson loved, but it was close to it, where he starts blocking and then slips out, more of a screen type of tight end delay. That one was good, and then the touchdown they find him, and he caught another fourth down later in the game too. That might have been one of his only catches after that first drive, but the touchdown on the first drive, I mean, that was a heck of a play. I mean, catch the ball, drag the tacklers, get pushed forward into the end zone. I mean, at that point, that first drive, you're like, wow, this is great, feeling good, sharp out of the bye, and then it was kind of all downhill from there, unfortunately. Um, but nice to see him involved, and I don't know. It was a game where they start the game strong with Laporta and they finish the game strong with JMO, and then everything in between was really what will get talked about. And that's the stuff they've got to work on. A lot of just unproductive drives, a lot of punts, and just so many third down situations where they were giving up pressure, and it was just too easy for the Vikings. And that's kind of the story.
Yeah. Aside from that, do you have anything else on the offense you want to touch on?
Um, I thought Goff was okay. Like some people were saying he was terrible. Some people said he was actually good because of the pass protection. Like I thought he was fine. He had some issues. He had some balls that he missed the accuracy, but considering the pressure, it was fine, I guess. He didn't put any balls like in terrible places and have a bunch of interceptions or anything. Um, I thought it was an okay day from him. I don't know if you had a thought on that.
I mean, I would just say he didn't do anything necessarily to help the team win. He was just kind of neutral. And because the offensive line, like his flaws were on full display in this one, which understandably warrant criticism because, well, they resulted in a lot of negative plays or missed plays and the panic quick throws and all that. It was visually very bad. So even when he did have good throws, like the the bad kind of overshadowed the good in this one. It ends up he ends up with a pretty fine stat line. Like he was 25 of 37 for 284 and 2. The five sacks though, not great. And there were a couple of cases of like the QB pressures where he's just holding onto the ball a little too long or not reacting quick enough or he just didn't seem prepared for what was happening up front either, which is bizarre because I thought that he would have been more prepared for what was coming.
Yeah, you'd think so. I think it's one of those things where Goff visually looks bad in these kinds of games. Just the
Yeah.
amount of sacks he takes, his inability to really evade pressure. But he did make some good throws in there. You could definitely see the way that Ragnow definitely helped him, and they worked as a team in pre-snap reads and those sorts of things. That was certainly on display in this game. Beyond that, it wasn't a great offensive day. It wasn't a horrible one. It wasn't good enough, but it also wasn't good enough because of the fumble, because of the special teams issues, because of the inability of the defense in high leverage moments. It was across the board. We can't just pin it on pass protection. We can't just pin it on interior. This was a every part of the team bears blame for this loss, and that's the kind of unfortunate thing.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly happy saying that this was a bad offensive day because we have such high expectations. And
Right.
like it's relative to expectations. This was a very poor showing for the offense, and we have to be fair in criticizing them. On the defensive side, this was a bizarre game because, especially to start, things were way too easy for the Vikings. They were getting way too many easy yards from Aaron Jones and JJ being able to check down to guys. And then the Vikings were also making plays. The first touchdown to Justin Jefferson, that's just an unbelievable catch by Jefferson in the end zone. But then you look at like the second touchdown they score, Hawkinson's just wide open and Thomas Harper just overruns his coverage and it's an easy pitch and catch. The McCarthy rushing touchdown was a joke from Alex Anzalone. I don't know what that angle was that he took in pursuit. That was horrible to watch. It was just way too easy for the Vikings in general.
Yeah, so the defense, the my prevailing mood defensively was like, man, we're getting cooked. And then I looked at the box score later in the game, and Vikings finished with 258 on 59 plays, 4.4 yards per play, which
Yeah.
is totally fine. That number looks fine. But you have to remember they had some short fields, and that allowed them to get points. So their first touchdown drive, 36 play touchdown drive because of the kickoff. Then, they have a 41-yard field goal drive. They have a 35-yard touchdown drive after the fumble and a 24-yard field goal drive. Like it just, right? It was handed to them on a silver platter to get those 27 points from field position and things like that. And especially how the game started really to me set the tone. That first drive, you give up the kick return and you get a short field and you give up 11 yards on the first play. Then 3rd and 9, you get got on a blitz where Kelvin Shepard goes for it. They check into the screen, boom, easy money. And then right after that is the Justin Jefferson dunks on Robertson, which I don't have a big issue with that. And then Justin Jefferson is what it is. But 5 plays, boom, 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 touchdown. And that kind of set the tone where it just felt like from that point forward, you weren't feeling great about the defense. And the story of this game really is the third downs. That's where the game was really decided on this side of the ball because the Lions, they intercept JJ, they have forced some punts, but and overall 4 of 12 for the Vikings on third down. It's not like they killed the Lions, but the third downs they allowed were really important. 3rd and 10, the blitz into the screen. 3rd and 9, Addison Cook Smollett for a deep ball. 3rd and 5, game on the line. They hit Naylor against Smollett, right? Just like the third downs they converted were huge, huge plays in the biggest moments, and they just couldn't get those stops. And if they get one of them, maybe they win. And that's the tough part about this game.
Yeah, and it I think it's kind of a similar thing to the offense and Goff, where visually this looked horrible for the defense, but then at the end of the day, they end up doing okay. We do have to give our flowers to Terrion Arnold on that interception, first career interception for him. In his return, he gave up one catch to, I believe it was Addison, where the Lions were in a cover three and it was just kind of in that soft spot between the curl flat and the deep zone on the left side there. So I'm not going to give him too much grief. Arnold was very good in this one. He got an interception, and on that interception, almost identical to the Mollett interception against the Bucks a couple of weeks ago. And that was a play that was like, wow, I haven't seen that kind of play in a while where a receiver like doesn't really have it and the defender just rips it away from him. And we've now seen it twice in the last two games for the Lions. So good for Terrion to get that interception. That's got to feel good. I had a stat actually that I can bring up regarding Terrion just to demonstrate how good he's been. Since week four, he has allowed just a 38.1 passer rating, which is second best among all NFL corners. For context, an incompletion, like on a spike, is a QBR of 39.6. He's forced an incompletion on 21% of his targets. That's 12th out of 116 qualifying corners, right behind Patrick Surtain, Quinyon Mitchell, and Sauce Gardner. Terrion has been very, very effective when he's been on the field. And the Lions very badly needed him in this one. Amik, yeah, he got by Jefferson a couple of times, but Jefferson had like 6 for 47 in this game. Totally okay, considering how good of a receiver Jefferson is. Then there's the front, where they got 5 sacks. Hutchinson got the funniest two-hand touch sack of his career so far. A couple of those are on like JJ just falling down. But the run defense, once again, not good enough. And I talked earlier about Josh Pascal and his ability to set the edge being so valuable and him coming back. And the reason for that is, oh my Lord, can the Lions not set the edge right now? And yes, Aiden Hutchinson is a part of that. Not because he's incapable of doing it, but because Hutchinson seems way too eager to jump inside and get aggressive on these run plays. What is going on with this front against the run right now?
Yeah, and the Vikings came in as one of the worst rushing offenses in the NFL. That's been a major issue for them this season, and they were just smoking the Lions in that phase of the game, especially early on. And it was just it, the run because when we talk about Aaron Jones in this game, he also has a screen pass that he takes. I think it was, yeah, he had a what like a 14-yard screen pass that he has in this game. Like they got a couple other things in there too, in the pass game as well. So it just felt like on the ground, Hutchinson gives up the edge. They have the issues on the other side. Linebacker reads weren't great. Terrion on the ground wasn't great either. Overran stuff. Tackling was poor. He got stiff armed by Jordan Mason on a run later in the game. So when people were posting the PFF grades on Monday, all these people were like, "Oh, why Terrion had a bad grade?" And if you look at it, it's because of the run defense and the tackling is where he got dinged. Coverage was fine. It's across the board at the moment. Like it's not a bad run defense, but as I've continued to say, they give up those 10, 12-yard chunks too easily. And that stuff seems easily correctable. Um, it just, it was a poor game from like a football IQ standpoint almost. And just like the stuff what was happening is just maximally frustrating. In Anzalone's angle in the open field on the JJ scramble, in broken tackles, in overrunning the edge, in just all that kind of stuff. Like it's like they're not really doing anything that's really awesome to beat us. We're kind of just sloppy, and our fundamentals aren't very good, and they're taking advantage of it. And that's not something we've seen, especially in run defense under Dan Campbell. And it's been an issue for too long now. They got to get that figured out. It's a missing piece at the moment. Giving up those chunks, you're not going to feel great at the moment.
Yeah, so we'll see what this defense is able to do going forward when they get guys like Davenport and Pascal back. I think Hutchinson is just going to keep being this aggressive all season because he hasn't changed it so far, which means the coaching staff has not talked to him about it. So I think that's just part of who he is at this point is just he's willing to get aggressive to try to make a play. If it works, it's going to look great, but the 5 times it doesn't in between is going to look really bad. So I also we should mention with Hutchinson and Jack Campbell, and Jack Campbell did have a fairly nice game as well, and he's just having an incredible season. Is a couple of penalties that happened in this game that were, and we should mention on the offense. We'll talk about that in a second too. The weird attempted tripping penalty. I had never seen an unnecessary roughness called for an attempt of a foul. I understand the premise, but That one is just a weird quirk in the rule book. And then Jack Campbell with the stupid body weight roughing the passer was ridiculous.
Yeah, the Campbell roughing the passer. I JJ doesn't weigh very much. When he gets hit, it looks unpleasant. And if we're just talking about body weight, well, it's easier to knock down a quarterback with low body weight and to land on top of it, right? Like I tweeted about that. Like you put me in at quarterback, I won't get up after I get hit, but it'll be a roughing the passer because it doesn't matter. It'll look really bad and it'll draw the flag. And that's just if you hit JJ in that way, and then you do it again and you hit Anthony Richardson in that way, it's not a roughing the passer because Anthony Richardson is thick and he's not going to go down like that. And that's just I just don't like that in the rule book. The tripping one is interesting because it's kind of like the old question of, is attempting and failing to rob a bank still a crime? Well, yes, because you tried to rob the bank, but you didn't succeed. Same thing here. You watch the replay and you're like, okay, I mean, yeah, I kind of see it. Like the leg did stick out in a very unnatural manner. It was really hard to argue that that was like a natural play, but he also really didn't come close to tripping him. And I'm more than anything, I'm just shocked the referee caught it. Like that just seems like something you wouldn't notice if the quarterback isn't going down to like spot that unnatural leg whip in that situation is kind of an impressive call, honestly. And that's the way it's written. So I mean, give him credit on it, but that was odd.
Yeah. So yeah, those penalties were certainly not ideal. I We should also quickly mention way too many penalties, like procedural penalties on the offense. So if we're talking about the sloppiness of this game, there were way too many false starts in this one. There was also the weird like CFL style double motion where Laporta and St. Brown are both in motion and they both throw their arms up like, "Oh, we messed up." And then the play still runs like very just sloppy day from the team in general. And that ultimately coming out of a bye, that falls on Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you see a CFL double motion in an NFL game? I mean, that's you never see that. That was very strange. So overall, a very weird day in that regard. In ref talk, I will say I don't know how they missed the JMO touchdown. They rolled it out of bounds at first, and you watch the replay, you're like, he wasn't even close to out of bounds.
Yeah.
That was strange. Strange they missed that one. I'm glad that they've gotten the Tyrion the interception and like the one the previous week that they've gotten those right on replay. Like you always you worry about the tie goes to the receiver, and in both cases, I thought it was pretty clear cut that they had they had possession and they got it right. So credit to them on that. The Lion, a few other things I had here. Lions got the Vikings to jump on a hard count, so
Yes, they
that was
did.
fun. And then a bad week for coaching overall, but credit Dan Campbell on the challenge on the Justin Jefferson catch. That was a snipe.
Yeah. That seems like a 50-50 play that they called a catch on the field, so I assumed they would have upheld it. But when a receiver squeezes the ball from the sides and has their whole body weight land on the ball, pushing it into the ground, yeah, that's probably an incomplete. So credit to Campbell there. We also, though, need to talk about Dave Phipp once again and his special teams unit that, holy moly, was horrible in this game. I will shout out, I believe is it Maurice Price for the Vikings, the returner, was absolutely, or Miles Price, my bad.
Miles
Miles
Price, yeah.
Price, holy, that kid was unbelievable in this game. He had a kick return called back due to holding. Now, there's the was the holding the reason he was able to break out into the open field? Yeah, maybe, but he on a bunch of returns in this one was super dangerous. Sailors for the Lions has no juice as a returner, and he was very consistently being stopped at the 29-yard line pretty much every time. And then there's the blocked field goal that, if you want to talk about swinging the result of a game, was probably the biggest reason that the Lions lost at the end there. Just horrible day from the special teams altogether.
Yeah, you have in total a kick return touchdown that doesn't count, but it was still going to be a good return. Like the hold is what made it a touchdown, but it was still going to be a good return before the hold. Of another that's field, you have a blocked field goal. I mean right after it felt like they had finally gotten a hold of the special teams, then it just kills them in this game. And I didn't have a major take on the block field goal. I don't know if because I saw some discussion about was it a like a low kick, right? Like that it was partially on Bates for the trajectory of the kick, got it blocked. I don't have a major take on that. Any way you slice it, it just can't happen. And Jack Fox saves a touchdown. Now, obviously, the Vikings they did score a touchdown if I remember
No,
correctly on that
that was a
drive,
field
and
goal
and they
drive.
no they held under field goal. So okay, so Fox saved him 4 points there because he chased that one down. That looked like they had it, and he rescued it. But that was the most egregious one. I'm glad you brought up Sailors though because they're not getting anything from that right
No.
now, and maybe Sailors is sure-handed and he catches it and whatever, but I feel like you got to explore someone else there just to get something out to the 50 at some point, right? Rip one off and someone else gives that one a shot.
So my argument is, why is Dominic Lovett on this team? If you don't want him to be a returner, why is he here? I believe he was being used as a gunner, him and Tesla, but you can get anyone to be, and he can still be a gunner. Why is he here? He's not here to be on offense. He's not here to be a receiver. And he's not here to be the punt returner as long as Khalif Raymond is healthy and functioning, which we saw when Raymond got hurt, that Lovett was the returner after that. But why, like, this is the only purpose to have a speedy, shifty player on the roster when you have no other use for him is speed, gunner, and shiftiness, returner. Sailors is neither speedy nor shifty. Sure, like you said, he might be sure-handed and he won't fumble. There's no way that Dominic Lovett is going to fumble at a rate that is so extreme that he will be less valuable on kickoffs than Sailors. It is shock. And you saw the Vikings were targeting Sailors. When he lined up on the left, they kicked it left. When he lined up on the right, they kicked it right. They were finding where Sailors was and making sure he was the one getting the ball because they know he's not a threat. It is just horrible. And this is almost more egregious than the Grant Stewart stuff at the start of the year because yeah, that was a weird gimmick, but they at least went away from it right away. The Sailor stuff has been here since preseason, and they have no indication that they're going to try anything else aside from Dan Campbell saying a couple of weeks ago that they need more.
Yeah, kickoff is too important part of the game now with the changed rules. Like it's very few teams are doing touchbacks at the moment. The prevailing philosophy is putting it in play and making the opponent return it. So it's not something they can ignore. And right now, with the combination of leaky coverage and not getting any explosives out of their return unit, they're giving up yards there. And that's a major area of concern at the moment for me. Just did the only redeeming part of the bad special teams game is at least we could say every part of the team deserved blame. That no one, I guess Jack Fox was probably blameless. I didn't have an issue with Jack Fox, but everyone else shared some part of this. The only thing that I thought was unambiguously good, really, was the fourth downs. They were 3 for 3 on fourth down. I liked all those decisions. I don't know if you did, but I had no issue with those. They picked them up. That was why they had a shot to win this game because if they don't get one or two of those, they're cooked. But they scored 2 touchdowns on them and another one that led to a field goal drive. Those were essential for the points they got.
Yep, and you also have the we talked about it earlier, the hard count on 4th and 5
Yep.
it would have been. So they were so successful on fourth downs that they were able to bait the Vikings into that hard count. So credit to the offense for executing in those key moments. That's something, I guess. But the third downs, I mean, they had to be on fourth down because they were 5 for 17 on third down, which is also just so I eh.
Yeah, not a good game to lose. The only the only redeeming thing about this game was uh, our this week in Schadenfreude opportunity right after the game, or right when the game was ending. I flipped over. There was like it was right after the Naylor catch that sealed the game. The game's over. I flip over to red zone. We got to see the ending of the Packers game. And as soon as that Panthers field goal went through, you're kind of like, well, this sucked, but we got a mulligan. Like we got a do-over. This was not good, but our division rival also did something very not good, and both teams lost games that they were significant favorites in. Lions were what 9.5 point, and Green Bay I think was like 13, something like that. So not a good week for either team in the NFC North, and that's the only saving grace.
Yeah, so and we can talk about the Packers now. I thought they had turned a corner. I thought after that second half against the Steelers, when they actually looked like a competent football team again, that they were going to be like, oh, we're a good team now and we're going to start playing like it. Nope. At home against the Panthers, who are very mediocre, they just play horribly, and Jordan Love deserves a lot of the blame. Did you see the 4th and 8 that the Packers went for it, and Love runs around for like 20 seconds and then heaves a ball across his body into the arms of a defender who drops it? It was one of the most baffling plays I've seen in a while. Awful from Green Bay.
The camera pan there is an all-timer because you're watching Love run around and then it just pans up and the only person on screen at first is the Panthers TV. You just start laughing immediately at that. And then I guess he was directing his receiver to run that direction and the receiver like just didn't see it, and that was the idea. And honestly, it's a fourth down. So
Yeah.
who cares, I guess, in the end. And it was better for the Panthers that he dropped it for field position's sake on a fourth down. But just a really funny play. I didn't get to see any of this game until the very end, and I honestly wasn't keeping close tabs on it. Like I saw the score, but to me, especially you go back to last year. Remember the Packers a year ago? Their whole thing was they just didn't lose to bad teams. They couldn't beat the Lions. They couldn't beat Philadelphia, etc. They went, I think, 12-5. They couldn't beat the Vikings. They all the teams that were better than them they lost to, and all the teams they were better than they beat. And so this was not a game that I came in thinking, oh, the Packers are going to lose this game. And even when they're tied, second, third quarter, I was not thinking the Packers were going to lose. And I refused to follow it really. I was like, I'm not getting my hopes up. And then I flip over just because oh the Panthers are in field goal range. They could win the game. And then when it went through, I was like, wow, they really lost that game. But this is after Cleveland earlier in the year. The Packers this season have been much more susceptible to these off games. And, just talking about the offense here for Green Bay, it's not bad, but there's still a few questions, I feel
Well,
like, at the moment.
they also had a big loss on the offense. Tucker
Yes.
Kraft is going to be out for the year. Did you see the clip? I think it was Romeo Dobbs who was talking about him like he died, and he was like, "Oh," Dobbs was like, "Well, he's in a better place now." It's like, does Romeo? He's alive. He's still breathing. He's just injured. It's like, yeah, like. It's a shame he's in a better place though, so we'll keep. It's like, dude, relax. But that is a big loss for the Packers offense, a super serious injury. So wish speedy recovery for Kraft, who has emerged as one of the better young tight ends in the league this season and is very entertaining after the catch, honestly. So that's a big loss for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you go
They,
back to that Steelers game, he really was a huge part of that. I mean,
woo,
they don't.
yeah,
He made a couple just massive plays for them in that game. They would not have won that game otherwise.
yeah. So. Ugly loss for the Packers now with losses to the Browns and Panthers and a tie to the Cowboys. They seem they're so Jekyll and Hyde this year. Speaking of NFC North teams and chaos, the Chicago Bears and Cincinnati Bengals played a game of football where a lot of points were scored, 89 points were scored. The Bears well, they were up by like 13 with like a minute 40 to go. The Bengals score a touchdown to draw within one score, but they're out of timeouts, so you think the game's over. The Bengals manage to recover the onside kick and very quickly go down and score a touchdown. And you think, wow, now the Bears are in trouble. They're going to have to go down and get a touchdown. And then Caleb Williams delivers a strike to Colston Loveland, who then spins out of a tackle and runs another 30 yards for a touchdown. It was that fourth quarter was one of the most chaotic things I've seen. And I watched the entirety of Broncos Giants the other week. This was just such a drunk football game. Joe Flacco threw for 400 yards for the first time in his career, which was shocking. He threw for 470 and four. Like, what was this game, man?
Yeah, this is another one. It was concurrent with the Lions game, but this one there was so much going on, it lasted a little longer, and so we got to see the ending. And I mean, the onside kick recovery was remarkable, and then the game just kept. They go down and score, and when Cincinnati scored, there was it like 50 seconds left, a minute, something like that, to take the lead. You knew it was too early. Like like with the Bengals defense, you're like, the Bears are going to drive and win this game, no question. And then the Loveland play, I mean, really cartoonish the way he spun off the tackler and then kept going. And I saw some comments from some of the Bengals players on the offense in the locker room after the game, and well, how it yeah, I can't imagine it's a good scene in that locker room. Just the tension between the offense and the defense. Like the defense, how are
Yeah.
they that bad? I mean, that's just unbelievable.
And they almost traded Trey Hendrickson. Like they were willing to trade him for less than a first round pick.
I've said this before, but like if you go back in time to when the Bengals played in that Super Bowl and just telling people where they would be 4 years later,
With
it's
most
tough,
of the
man.
same personnel still there. Like it's not like they lost a ton of key pieces aside from like Jesse Bates.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
mean it's but the Bears, they're now 5-3. They're in the cusp of the playoffs. They got the Giants this week, so they could get to 6-3. But as we talked about last week, really hard schedule after that.
yeah. Aside from that, I'm not gonna lie, the it wasn't like the most interesting slate of games just because there wasn't a lot of like interconference games, so it's not a lot of stuff that's relevant to the Lions. I will shout out Cam Little, who did finally break the NFL record for the longest field goal, got a 68 yarder. He got a 70 yarder in preseason, so you figured it was a matter of time. He breaks the record, 68-yard field goal. Aside from that, the Rams kill the Saints like you expect. The Steelers beat the Colts. Daniel Jones finally looks like Daniel Jones again. Although we do have to talk about the Colts because
Yep.
NFL trade deadline, the Colts with a blockbuster trading two first round picks and AD Mitchell to the Jets for Sauce Gardner. Now, this was a big trade that came out of nowhere. What were your initial reactions to that?
Well, it seems like ground zero for the Jets. They are starting over. They have detonated the building, and they will begin reconstructing from scratch. And that's the right thing. I mean, two first round picks is a good haul, I think, for Sauce Gardner. Like, I don't have a major
That's a
issue with
real good
that.
haul.
Yeah, because he was the big talk of the league, and then last couple of years seems like he hasn't been at the same caliber that he had been playing at previously. Obviously, he's young enough that he can bounce back and get back to elite level, but two firsts is nice, and then they make the Quinn and Williams trade. They get some pieces from that, and I was looking at their pick haul is pretty solid. So um, they have the pieces to be able to. It's kind of like this is like their Stafford trade, right? Like they're getting a couple firsts. This can begin the total rebuild. It's the Jets.
You need a
Like it,
QB, man. They
but
had
yeah,
that draft where they had Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, so defensive rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year, Brees Hall, and Jermaine Johnson. A super solid top of that draft, and they still suck. Why? Because they don't have a quarterback. So with this plethora of picks that they now have, for the love of God, you have to hit on one of these QB prospects eventually.
yeah, and then they need the QB obviously, but like this just it feels like the Lions with William Clay Ford era, where it just like doesn't really matter.
Mm.
We're at a point where it feels like this is an ownership problem. Like it just has to be that there are problems with this organization from the top down, and I'm in a group chat, and there's one Jets fan in there who gave up on the Jets years ago, basically. And like basically when Aaron Rodgers like had the running out of the tunnel with the flag and tore the Achilles, that was like his last straw. But he just basically is like, it doesn't matter. They're the Jets. Like they'll fuck it up. They just will. Like it. That's the expectation with these guys. And on paper, it's a good move, but can you trust the Jets to make the right decision? And it's hard to believe that. And they're probably going to get the top pick in this draft, maybe number two, number three, something
Top
right at
top
the
three. Yeah.
right at the top. And is this the right year? Quarterback scouting so hard to me. Mendoza looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Ty Simpson looks pretty good. Are they NFL guys? I don't know. I mean, they don't look like a Trevor Lawrence looked as a draft prospect, but Trevor Lawrence hasn't been that great in the NFL. So it's all kind of a stab in the dark at this point.
Yeah, so they also almost traded Brees Hall. They wanted a third rounder for him. The Chiefs offered a fourth rounder. Decided to hold on to him, so they at least still have a talented running back, I guess. But that's yeah, I don't know, man. So Aaron Glenn gets to rebuild that. Speaking of Quentin Williams, though, the Dallas Cowboys trade a first round pick and a second round pick and Mozzie Smith for Quentin Williams. So they essentially they upgrade from a second round pick to a first round pick to swap from Micah Parsons to Quentin Williams. Very
I mean, I,
bizarre.
I mean, I don't hate Quinn Williams, but not the
He's
best asset management of all time.
yeah. Well, and
Just
we heard this chatter a few weeks ago where it's like the Cowboys are looking to make a splash acquisition for a defensive lineman.
yeah.
It's like, why? You just traded one. And then they do make the splash acquisition. It's like, look, Quentin Williams, fantastic young player, like great player, will be a huge help to that defensive line. It just looks really bad in retrospect because you had a probable Hall of Fame level player that you gave away for some reason.
Yeah, it's odd because they're 3-5-1 on this season. They have a bye week this week. Then they're at Raiders. Okay, they can probably win that 4-5-1. Eagles, Chiefs, Lions after that.
Have fun.
Vikings, Chargers. Then they finish at Commanders, at Giants. Maybe they can get like the 7 seed, but it feels like a tough climb at the moment. So, not to say that trading for Quentin Williams is like a win now move necessarily, but they were an unexpected team to be buying to me at where they are. Um,
Yeah. Especially
but
with the
on the other
brutal
hand,
loss.
if you know that you need run defense help, which we've been saying that for some time, and this is a long term acquisition, and the Jets are selling off, I can see doing it now. I'll be curious to see how it turns out for them for sure.
Yeah. So, lastly, as we move into the preview for next week, the Washington Commanders got absolutely destroyed at home by the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday night. And in the process, while down like 38 to 7 in the fourth quarter, Jaden Daniels dislocates his elbow. It was a very gruesome looking injury. He is going to miss a long period of time, presumably. At the very least, he will not be there against the Lions on Sunday. They also, there was the weird like suspension, non-suspension with Frankie Louvu, who there was that whole weird situation. Regardless, the Commanders are very beat up going into this game against the Lions, and they were playing very bad before that, anyways. So some of the excitement for this rematch after the divisional round has kind of been the wind has been taken out of our sails a little bit.
Were you watching when the injury happened?
I was not.
Yeah, I had it on in the background, and then he's down, and you're like, oh man, that looks he looks really injured, and then they show it, and it's like, ooh, I mean that was one of the worst NFL ones in a while. Like you think about the Hutchinson one last year. You watch that, and at first you're like, oh, I don't see anything really. That looks fine. And then there was a few. You got more angles, then you could kind of see the way that it kind of was hanging there, broken after the fact. But it didn't look gruesome at first. Look, the Daniels one. I mean, he puts that arm down to brace his fall, and then just gets tackled like on top of it, and it just bends the other way, and you're like, yep, he's cooked. Like we will not see him for some. And some of the prognosis actually sounds better than I was expecting, but there's no real reason to rush anything with him at this point in time. This team is 3-6. He's going to miss some time. Presumably that knocks them fully out. They don't have the hardest schedule to finish, but hard to see them making a push for the playoffs at this point. And so they were a team that already has had defensive issues. They've allowed 236 points this season. The Lions have allowed 178. So a very different ballpark there. Um, not a particularly good defensive team. They weren't last year either. They're allowing 378 yards per game, 26 points against. The thing we talked about last year coming into the playoff game was the rushing game, rush defense in particular, right? We talked about Lions need to run all over these guys. Great matchup for us. And then the problem was Lions fell behind and they got out of their game and they fell they fell into passing. And at the end of the day, they ended up having didn't Goff throw it like 50 some times in that
Yeah.
playoff game? Like they totally got out of the comfort zone. And so hopefully with Daniels out, Lions can get some stops early, get some points on the board, and then run the ball and kind of control the game. It might be tougher sledding with the Lions offensive line situation, but this is just a beat up team. And there is a team that's not playing well now. This needs to be a win. And again, Dan Campbell, they bounce back after wins. And they need to. They need to get a win here, get to 6-3, and then you have a big game against Philadelphia.
Yep. So ideally, yeah, this needs to be a Gibbs game, Montgomery. I don't really care. Whoever. Just run the ball effectively. The pass game, you'll have a lot more quick concepts, but you should be like there's so much talent, you'll be able to figure it out. Just no, please, for the love of God, don't tell Jamison Williams to throw the football. That I no, don't do that again. So we'll see what happens. If kind of feels like the same thing we were saying going into the Vikings game. If you lose this, then we have some bigger problems. But
This one is
surely,
this one's
yeah,
even worse than the Vikings because credit to the Vikings. JJ came back and he played well in that game. I liked the way JJ played. Like, give him credit. This should not be that same. I mean, Mariota isn't the worst backup quarterback in the world, but is not going to be a world beater by any means. And it weather-wise, I just pulled this up for Sunday. Uh, about 60 degrees. Doesn't look like any precipitation, so shouldn't be a cold weather issue or anything like that. Should be clear. Just take care of business. And it needs to be a big, no matter what, no matter the score, you just want to see crisp execution. Clean up the
yep.
sloppy stuff. Special teams needs to be better. Third down offense as well. It just would be so nice to just get a reset against a not very good defense because you're going to have your work cut out for you against Philly's front the next week.
Yeah, and I would not be shocked if they do rest Decker and Sewell, knowing that they need them to be as close to 100% for that Philly game, because that is a much more difficult test. So we'll see what Sunday brings. We're pretty much done with the 1 o'clock Eastern starts for the rest of the season. I think we only have one more left in Week 18 against the Bears. Everything else is going to be at different times. Like we got the 4:25 Eastern, then we got Sunday Night Football, then we've got sorry, we have one
The
against the
Giants,
Giants
the
as well.
Giants is 1 o'clock. Yep.
And then Packers on Thanksgiving, Cowboys on Thursday night, Rams late afternoon, Steelers late afternoon, Vikings on Christmas, then Bears again at 1 o'clock. So, and I hope you enjoyed them because we only had a couple, but they're pretty much gone. We're back to the odd timing for the Lions this season. The curse of being a good team that's very interesting to watch. So hopefully the Lions get back to their winning ways. If you made it this far, be sure to follow the show at Payne and Drain on Twitter. You can find me at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain. If you are on YouTube, make sure to hit like and subscribe. If you're on a podcasting platform, be sure to hit follow and leave us a review. And we'll see you guys next week to break down whatever happens in Lions Commanders. And until then, guys, have a good one. Cheers.